The starship shuddered violently as it tore through the planet's thick, storm-choked atmosphere. Captain Ryan Voss gritted his teeth, gripping the control panel as sparks flew around him. The warning alarms blared. He was going down fast. Outside the cockpit, the sky was a swirling mix of purple lightning and thick crimson clouds. The planet below was a vast jungle, endless and unmapped. Sci-Fi Prime, the one place in the galaxy no sane traveler dared to land. But Ryan had no choice. His ship's engines had been hit by an unseen force, something powerful enough to rip through his shields like paper. He had tried to dodge it, but the next thing he knew, his systems failed. Now he was falling toward the surface of a forbidden world. The ship smashed through the jungle canopy, tearing apart trees with massive twisting roots. Ryan braced himself as the impact threw him forward. Then, everything went black. A distant growl dragged Ryan back to consciousness. His head throbbed. His flight suit was torn in places, but he was alive. That was something. Slowly, he pushed himself up, ignoring the sharp pain in his ribs. His ship was wrecked, half buried under fallen trees and thick, violet-colored vines. Smoke curled into the air, warning the entire jungle of his presence. Ryan wiped the sweat from his forehead, his short, dark blonde hair damp. He checked his surroundings. The jungle was unlike anything he had seen before. Massive glowing plants, eerie shadows moving just beyond the trees, and the distant hum of creatures he couldn't see but could feel watching him. Then the sound of footsteps. Not just one, many. Ryan turned sharply, his heart pounding. From the shadows, tall figures emerged. They were Kyphorans, and they looked nothing like ordinary soldiers. Their obsidian-black exoskeletons gleamed under the strange jungle light, their piercing violet eyes locked onto him like predators spotting prey. Each warrior was armed with curved, bladed spears that seemed to pulse with energy. Their movements were precise, calculated, inhumanly fast. Ryan slowly raised his hands, his mind racing. He knew of the Typhorans, warriors feared across the galaxy. No outsider was ever allowed on their planet. A taller figure stepped forward, her helmet adorned with silver markings. She studied Ryan for a long moment before speaking in a voice that was both smooth and commanding. "You are an intruder," she said, "and intruders do not leave Sci-Fi Prime." Ryan clenched his jaw. "So much for a warm welcome." "I didn't land here by choice," he said. "Something took down my ship." The warrior ignored his words. She tilted her head slightly, as if listening to something. Then she gestured toward him. "Seize him." Ryan barely had time to react before two warriors moved like shadows, their speed unnatural. A hard impact struck the back of his knees, forcing him down. Metal restraints clicked around his wrists. "Wait, let's talk about this," Ryan protested. The warriors didn't answer. Instead, they pulled him to his feet and dragged him toward the jungle, toward something in the distance, a massive towering structure rising above the treetops. The Hive Citadel. Ryan didn't need to know their language to understand. He was being taken to their leader. And from the way the warriors whispered among themselves, one thing was clear. He was in serious trouble. Ryan's boots scraped against the stone floor as the Typhoran warriors dragged him deeper into the towering Hive Citadel. The air inside was thick and humid, carrying the faint scent of something metallic and sweet. Strange bioluminescent veins pulsed along the dark walls, casting eerie violet light across the towering corridors. Ryan's wrists ached against the restraints, but his mind was racing. He needed to understand the situation before making a move. He had heard rumors about Sci-Fi Prime, a world ruled by a powerful warrior queen, where outsiders were never seen again. If he didn't find a way out, he might never leave. The warriors pushed him through a massive set of gates, and suddenly, he was in the heart of the hive. The throne chamber was enormous. Jagged black pillars reached toward the high ceiling, and strange winged creatures perched in the shadows, watching him with unblinking golden eyes. In the center, sitting on an elevated stone throne, was Queen Severa. She was imposing, taller than her warriors, her midnight black exoskeleton gleaming under the eerie lights. Her violet eyes burned with intelligence and something even more dangerous, amusement. Ryan had seen royalty before. He had met diplomats, warlords, and self-proclaimed emperors. But Severa was different. She studied him like a predator deciding whether to kill or play with its food. Finally, she stood, her movements graceful yet inhumanly precise. "A human," she said, her voice smooth but carrying a deadly undertone. "How?" Unexpected. Ryan forced himself to stay calm. "Didn't exactly plan a vacation here." Severa smirked, revealing a glimpse of sharp, ivory-like teeth. She took slow steps toward him, her warriors kneeling as she passed. "This world does not welcome outsiders," she continued. "But the gods must have sent you, for a reason." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "Yeah? And what reason is that?" The queen stopped just a few feet away. She looked him over, her gaze lingering on his battle-worn flight suit, the burns and scrapes on his skin, the way he held himself despite being captured. Then she turned to her warriors. "The trial of kings begins tomorrow," she announced. A low murmur spread through the room. Some of the warriors shifted uneasily, while others nodded with grim satisfaction. Ryan frowned. He didn't like the sound of that. Trial of kings. Severa's violet eyes gleamed. "A sacred tradition," she said. "Our greatest warriors will fight to prove their worth. The one who survives earns the right to claim the prize." Ryan felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "And what exactly is the prize?" The queen smiled. "You." Ryan's pulse spiked. "I think there's been a mistake." "There is no mistake," Severa interrupted. "A human has not set foot on Typhora Prime in 1,000 years. Your arrival is a sign. The gods demand a hunt." Ryan clenched his jaw. He didn't believe in gods, but he knew when someone was twisting fate to suit their own desires. "And what happens if none of them survive?" he asked. The queen's smirk widened. "Then the gods have chosen you for me." A chill ran down Ryan's spine. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a game, one where every outcome had been designed for him to lose. And Queen Severa was already enjoying watching him squirm. Ryan sat in a cold, dark cell, his back pressed against the stone wall. Faint violet light pulsed from the strange veins running through the hive citadel structure, casting eerie shadows. Outside, he could hear the distant roar of a crowd, a sound that made his stomach tighten. The trial of kings was about to begin. He had spent the last few hours listening to the whispers of Typhoran guards passing by. 7 warriors would enter the arena. Only one would survive. And at the end of it all, that survivor would claim him as their prize. Ryan exhaled slowly. He wasn't about to let that happen. A sharp metallic click echoed through the chamber as the cell door slid open. 2 Typhoran guards stepped in, their glowing violet eyes watching him closely. One of them motioned with her spear. "It is time." Ryan stood, rolling his shoulders. His hands were no longer bound. But that didn't mean he was free. He was being led to the slaughter, and every warrior in that arena would be desperate to win. As they marched him through the hive's corridors, the roar of the crowd grew louder. Ryan's mind raced, assessing his options. He had no weapons, no armor, and no allies. If he wanted to survive, he had to think fast. The moment they stepped into the blinding light of the arena, Ryan's breath caught. The arena was massive, surrounded by towering stone walls lined with thousands of Typhoran spectators. Strange, winged creatures circled the sky above, shrieking as if hungry for blood. At the center stood 7 Typhoran warriors, each taller, stronger, and more heavily armored than Ryan. Their obsidian-black exoskeletons gleamed, their curved weapons pulsed with energy, and their eyes burned with fierce determination. And then, above them all, on a grand throne overlooking the arena, sat Queen Severa. She leaned forward slightly, her violet gaze locked onto Ryan. There was amusement in her expression, but also curiosity. as if she was eager to see how long he would last. A Sci-Fi announcer stepped forward, raising his spear. The crowd fell silent. The trial of kings begins now. The massive metal gates slammed shut, trapping Ryan inside with 7 warriors who wanted him as their trophy. Ryan clenched his fists. No weapons, no armor, just his instincts. The first warrior moved without hesitation, lunging at Ryan with lightning-fast speed. Ryan barely dodged, rolling to the side as the warrior's bladed spear struck the ground, sending sparks flying. Before Ryan could react, another Sci-Fi attacked. He ducked just in time, feeling the air whistle past his head as the warrior's blade sliced dangerously close. The crowd roared in approval. Ryan didn't waste time. He grabbed a fistful of arena sand and threw it into the eyes of one of the warriors. The Typhoon hissed in irritation, momentarily blinded. That was his chance. Ryan darted toward the fallen spear, gripping it tightly. The moment his fingers wrapped around the weapon, a strange pulse of energy surged through his body. The spear responded to his touch, its glowing edges humming to life. The warriors hesitated for a fraction of a second, shocked that a human had dared to claim one of their sacred weapons. Ryan smirked. I guess I'm playing now. The trial of kings had just begun, and he wasn't going down without a fight. Ryan tightened his grip on the Typhoon spear, feeling the weapon's strange energy pulse in his hands. The warriors surrounding him hesitated, their violet eyes narrowing as they assessed their prey. But Ryan was no longer just a prize. He was a threat. A massive Sci-Fi warrior, clad in obsidian black armor, lunged first. His twin blades gleamed under the arena's harsh light as he swung at Ryan's chest. Ryan dove to the side, rolling across the sand. He barely avoided the strike, but the shockwave of energy from the impact sent him stumbling. The warrior was fast, too fast. Ryan couldn't fight them head-on. He had to be smarter. Another warrior charged, a female Sci-Fi with sharp, curved daggers. She moved like a shadow, her movements swift and precise. Ryan saw the glint of her blade a second before she attacked. Instead of dodging, he stepped forward, bringing up his spear in a desperate block. The moment her dagger hit the weapon, the spear flared with energy, sending a jolt through the air. The force knocked her backward, surprising the others. Ryan blinked. This weapon wasn't just for show. The spear responded to him, not just as a tool, but like it had a will of its own. The crowd erupted into cheers, their excitement growing. A human was fighting back. But the warriors wouldn't hold back now. 2 more Sci-Fi attacked at once, their weapons slicing through the air. Ryan twisted his body, dodging one strike and barely parrying the other. The force of the impact sent vibrations through his arms, but he held firm. A sudden instinct flared in his mind. Ryan shifted his stance, gripping the spear tighter. When the next warrior lunged, Ryan thrust the spear forward, not aiming for the warrior, but for the ground beneath him. The spear unleashed a pulse of energy. The sand beneath the warrior's feet exploded, throwing him off balance. Ryan spun, using the distraction to land a solid kick to the warrior's chest, sending him sprawling. The crowd roared even louder. On the throne above, Queen Severa leaned forward, her violet gaze locked onto Ryan. Intrigue flickered across her face. This human was supposed to be weak, just another prize. Yet he was still standing. Ryan didn't have time to think about that. The biggest warrior, the one who had attacked first, was coming at him again. This time, Ryan didn't dodge. He raised the spear, channeling every ounce of instinct he had. The warrior swung his blade down with all his strength. But Ryan met the strike head-on. The moment the weapons connected, the spear reacted. A wave of raw energy erupted from the impact, sending a shockwave rippling through the arena. The warrior staggered back, his armor cracked from the force. Silence fell over the crowd. For the first time, the warriors hesitated. Ryan stood tall, breath heavy, heart pounding. He wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. He was winning. and Queen Severa was watching closely. The arena fell silent. Ryan stood tall, his chest rising and falling with deep breaths. His grip on the spear tightened as he stared down the remaining warriors. The shockwave of energy from his last strike had left cracks in the arena floor, and his enemies, who once looked at him like prey, now regarded him with something else. Caution. High above, on her blackstone throne, Queen Severa watched intently. Her amethyst eyes gleamed with curiosity. The human had not only survived, but had begun to dominate her warriors. She leaned forward. A sharp clap rang through the arena. Ryan flinched, still in battle mode. But when he looked up, he saw Severa slowly applauding, her lips curling into a small, satisfied smile. The remaining warriors stepped back, a silent signal that the fight was over. Ryan kept his weapon raised. He wasn't foolish enough to believe this was finished. Then Severa spoke, her voice smooth and commanding. Impressive. Her words slithered through the air like silk, filled with amusement and something deeper. Interest. Ryan swallowed, his heartbeat still pounding in his ears. I expected you to break. Severa continued. But you adapt. You survive. And now, you fight back. She stood, her long cloak flowing behind her as she descended the stone steps toward the arena floor. The guards beside her tensed, but did not stop her. Ryan, however, did not lower his weapon. The Queen of Severa was tall and striking, her deep violet skin illuminated by the soft glow of the arena's energy fields. A golden headdress framed her sharp features, and her dark hair cascaded over her shoulders in braids woven with glowing silver threads. She was powerful, dangerous, and yet she was smiling at him. Tell me, human, Severa mused as she stopped a few feet away. Do you see now why I brought you here? Ryan's jaw tightened. To entertain you. Severa chuckled, her voice like a low purr. Partially. She took another step closer, and Ryan felt a strange energy in the air, not just from the spear in his hands, but from her presence itself. You have potential, she continued. I could use that. Ryan frowned. Use me? For what? The Queen tilted her head. To fight. Ryan's breath caught. What? Severa's eyes gleamed. You are stronger than I anticipated. More. Capable. And I am in need of warriors. Ryan's grip on the spear tightened. He wasn't about to be her pawn. I don't fight for tyrants, he said firmly. Severa laughed softly. Who said I was a tyrant? Ryan narrowed his eyes. I've seen enough. The Queen studied him, amusement flickering across her face before something more serious settled in. You assume much, human. She turned slightly, glancing at the warriors who still stood at the edges of the arena. Some looked at Ryan with respect, others with resentment. Then she looked back at him. You fight for survival. That I understand. But what if I offered you something greater? Ryan hesitated. He didn't trust her. He had no reason to. But something about her tone, about the way she was watching him, told him that she was not done testing him yet. Severa's smile returned, slow and deliberate. Prove your loyalty, she said, and you will be more than just a survivor. You will be a legend. Ryan exhaled sharply. He had survived this far. But now, a new game was beginning, and he wasn't sure if he could win. Ryan's heart pounded as he studied Queen Severa's expression. She was serious, deadly serious. The way she looked at him wasn't like a ruler speaking to a captive. It was something else, a challenge. He gripped the spear tighter, his mind racing. He had been thrown into this brutal world against his will, forced to fight, forced to survive. And now, this queen, this powerful alien ruler, was offering him something more. But at what cost? Ryan took a slow breath and forced himself to meet her gaze. And if I refuse? Severa's lips curved into a knowing smile. You won't. Ryan clenched his jaw. Cocky, confident, dangerous. The Queen turned and gestured, and the massive arena gates groaned open. A rush of cold air blew into the stadium, carrying the scent of rain and something metallic, blood. Ryan's muscles tensed. From the darkness beyond the gates, a low growl rumbled. The crowd that had been watching silently now whispered among themselves, murmuring in the alien tongue Ryan still didn't fully understand. But one thing was clear. Something was coming. Silvera stepped aside, giving Ryan a direct view of the massive corridor beyond the gates. A shadow moved. Then, with a violent snarl, a monstrous creature lunged forward, its claws scraping against the stone floor as it was dragged into the arena by thick, glowing chains. The beast was unlike anything Ryan had ever seen. Its body was covered in jagged, obsidian-like armor, its eyes glowing with a vicious orange light. 4 muscular arms, each ending in razor-sharp talons, flexed as it snapped its jaws, thick strands of saliva dripping onto the ground. The chains barely held it back. Ryan barely had time to process what he was looking at before Silvera spoke. "This is a Rakarak," she said smoothly, "a creature feared across the galaxy. It has torn through entire armies. Even my warriors struggle to defeat one." Ryan swallowed hard. Silvera's eyes locked onto his. "Kill it, and I will give you something no human has ever had." Ryan hesitated. "What?" She stepped closer, her voice lower now. "A way home." Ryan's chest tightened. Home. For the first time since he had crashed onto this cursed planet, a flicker of hope sparked in his chest. Was she telling the truth? Could he really go back? But first, he had to survive this. The guards released the chains. The Rakarak roared, its powerful legs pounding against the ground as it charged toward Ryan like a living storm. Ryan had no time to think. He dove to the side, rolling across the dirt just as the beast's massive claws sliced through the air where he had been standing. The impact alone sent dust and debris flying. Ryan scrambled to his feet, his grip tightening on his spear. His mind raced. How do you kill something like this? The Rakarak snarled, turning toward him with unnatural speed. Ryan didn't wait. He lunged forward, thrusting the spear toward its side. Clang! The spear bounced off the creature's armor, sending a jolt of pain through Ryan's arms. His eyes widened. It's too strong. The beast's tail whipped around, slamming into Ryan's chest. Pain exploded through his ribs as he was sent flying across the arena, hitting the ground hard. The crowd roared with excitement. Ryan coughed, struggling to get air back into his lungs. His vision blurred, but he could make out Silvera, still watching, still waiting. She was testing him. He gritted his teeth and pushed himself up. He wasn't going to die here. Not now. The Rakarak charged again. This time, Ryan was ready. He dodged left, using the creature's own momentum against it. As it stumbled forward, Ryan spotted a weak point, a gap in the armor beneath its jaw. His eyes narrowed. He had one shot. Summoning every ounce of strength, Ryan leaped forward, twisting his body midair and driving the spear straight into the exposed flesh beneath the Rakarak's jaw. The spear pierced deep. The creature let out a horrific shriek, thrashing wildly as black blood sprayed across the arena floor. Ryan hit the ground and rolled away just as the beast collapsed, its body twitching. Then silence. The crowd erupted into cheers and cries of shock. Ryan stayed on one knee, panting, his hands trembling. Then he heard footsteps approaching. He looked up. Queen Silvera stood over him, her expression unreadable, but there was something in her eyes. Approval. "You continue to surprise me, human." She extended a hand. Ryan stared at it. He had won. But what had he really won? After a moment, he reached out and took it. Ryan's fingers tightened around Queen Silvera's hand as she pulled him to his feet. His body ached from the fight, his ribs screaming in protest, but he forced himself to stand tall. The Rakarak's massive corpse lay behind him, its black blood soaking into the dirt. The crowd still roared, their voices mixing into a wild, chaotic hum. Severa's golden eyes shimmered as she studied him. "You are full of surprises, human." Ryan swallowed hard. He could still feel the creature's blood on his skin, the adrenaline rushing through his veins. He had survived. He had won. But now came the real challenge. Severa tilted her head, amused. "You fought well. Now, let's talk about your reward." Ryan's heart pounded. The way home, that's what she had promised. The Queen turned without another word, her long dark cloak sweeping across the floor as she walked toward the grand exit of the arena. Ryan hesitated only a moment before following. Two of her elite guards, towering figures clad in sleek obsidian armor, flanked him as he moved. Their expressions were unreadable, their glowing blue eyes fixed ahead. As they left the arena, the deafening roar of the crowd faded into silence, replaced by the soft hum of torches lining the stone hallways. Ryan took in his surroundings. The architecture was ancient, alien, and magnificent, with twisting dark metal and glowing silver runes etched into the walls. It felt both futuristic and primal at the same time. They soon entered a grand chamber, filled with shimmering tapestries and an enormous throne carved from dark crystal. The moment Severa took her seat, the guards stepped back, their hands resting on their weapons. Ryan's muscles tensed. Severa leaned forward, resting her chin on one hand. "You desire to go home, don't you?" Ryan exhaled sharply. "That's what you promised." The Queen's lips curled into a mysterious smile. "And I always keep my promises." She lifted her hand, and a holographic projection appeared before them. A swirling blue portal, crackling with energy. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. Earth. Through the projection, he could see a lush green forest, blue skies stretching above it. Home. His heart pounded. Was this real? Severa's voice was smooth as silk. "This portal can take you back. But I have a question first." Ryan tore his gaze away from the vision and looked at her warily. "What?" She stood gracefully, stepping down from her throne, her gaze never leaving him. "Why do you want to leave?" Ryan frowned. "Are you serious?" Her expression remained unreadable. "Think about it." She gestured around her. "You have already proven yourself stronger than most warriors here. You have defied death. You have my favor." She took another step closer, lowering her voice. "Do you truly want to return to a world where you are ordinary? Forgotten?" Ryan clenched his fists. "I have a life there. People waiting for me." Severa studied him for a long moment. Then she laughed softly. "Are you sure?" The way she said it made the hairs on Ryan's neck rise. She flicked her fingers, and the portal shimmered, changing its image. Now Ryan saw something different. His apartment. Empty, dust-covered, as if no one had been there for years. A flicker of doubt crept into his chest. Severa watched his reaction closely. Time moves differently between worlds. The life you knew may not exist anymore. Ryan's breath came faster. No, that couldn't be true. Could it? Severa's voice was soft but firm. "You don't have to go back to uncertainty." She reached out, brushing her fingertips lightly along his arm. "Stay here, with me." Ryan swallowed hard. There was something dangerously tempting in her offer. Power, purpose, a new life. The portal still crackled before him. One choice, one decision, and he had no idea what the right answer was. Ryan's heart pounded as he stood between two paths, one leading home, the other into the unknown. The portal shimmered, showing a vision of Earth, but Severa's golden eyes held him captive. Her voice was smooth, almost hypnotic. "Stay, Ryan. Be more than just a man. Here, you are a warrior, a legend." Ryan clenched his fists. Everything she said was tempting. If time had moved differently on Earth, what if he had nothing left? What if he returned only to find his world had forgotten him? But could he really trust Severa? He looked at the portal again. The familiar green forests of Earth called to him, but a flicker of doubt gnawed at his mind. Ryan exhaled sharply. You said you always keep your promises. If I stay, what happens next? Xavera's smile deepened. You will stand at my side. You will have power, wealth, and a place among the greatest warriors in the galaxy. She stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. You won my game, Ryan. But now, we can play a different one. The way she said it sent a shiver down his spine. Ryan's mind raced. He had survived things no human should have. He had fought, bled, and outlasted every monster she threw at him. But in the end, was this just another trap disguised as an offer? The guards around the room stood motionless, their glowing eyes watching him. If he refused, would they let him leave? Ryan forced himself to meet her gaze. And if I choose to go? For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then, Xavera's expression darkened, just for a split second, before she smiled again. Then you leave. As promised. Ryan's chest tightened. Was it really that simple? No, it never was. He took a slow step toward the portal, watching Xavera's reaction. Her fingers twitched slightly at her side. The guards stiffened, their hands hovering over their weapons. She wasn't going to let him walk away. Ryan's instincts screamed at him to move. Now, in a split second, he turned and lunged for the portal. Xavera's voice rang out like a whip. Stop him! The guards sprang into action, moving like shadows. Ryan felt the air shift behind him, a blade slicing through empty space just inches from his back. Too slow. He dived forward. The moment his fingers touched the edge of the portal, electricity surged through his body, pulling him in. Xavera's furious voice was the last thing he heard before everything went white. A new beginning. Ryan gasped as he stumbled forward, landing hard on cool grass. The scent of damp earth filled his lungs. The hum of alien energy was gone. He was back. He lifted his head. Tall trees stretched around him, their leaves rustling in the wind. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over everything. Earth. It was real. His breath hitched as he looked around. Was this the same world he left? Slowly, he rose to his feet. His body still ached from the battles, but he felt stronger, different. Ryan turned to look behind him. The portal flickered, its light fading fast. For a brief moment, he thought he saw Xavera's silhouette, her golden eyes burning with rage. And something else. Then, it was gone. The sky stretched endless above him, but his mind raced with questions. What had changed? What had he brought back with him? And most importantly, was he truly free?